Hi YouTube, we're back with the Airbus A380, and what we're going to be working on in this part of the video is these winglets that we've been unable to install because I didn't want to put them on flush the way they're supposed to be because they don't quite line up with the plane. And until this, just recently, I haven't been able to get the wing on. So now that we got the wing on, we can go ahead and make the alignment decisions. So it's pretty cool to see it all together like this so far. I mean, it's not all together, but it's getting very close. So really what we need to do is just go ahead and get this turned over and put it on its landing gear. And yes, that's not where the landing gear would normally be, and the landing gear is not done, but we've got a kind of a rough idea of where we want it to be at the end of the day. We're going to flip this over. We still got the extension cords and everything on there in case we need to run something. So we can get rid of our bean bag. And get rid of our table set up the way it is. You want to get some support under the mains. And lay this stuff out of the way. So we'll just go ahead and drag this over, just like so. Okay, perfect. So basically what we're looking for is, and we can go ahead and put the rudder in. I had to do a little protection on this top edge. The decals were wanting to come off, probably from falling out of the fuse a couple of times. Dinged up the decals. Alright, so we have that in there. And now what we need to do is we need to just make a value judgment on these, both front. Oops. See that? We've got a little damage point on there. That's annoying. Okay, so now that we've got those on there, my objective was to go ahead and trim this so that it sticks out more square with the actual with the fuselage. If you go like this, then it's like they're pointed in. It's like they're pointed in, and I just don't like that. It's kind of hard to tell in the video, but it's subtle. It's not a big difference. So I thought about it, and I shimmed them out earlier when I was kind of temping everything together, and I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to trim this little teeny bit about right here. Just going to trim it. We don't hardly need to take any material off, but we just need to allow for that angle. And I'm just going to keep cutting this at brand new blade, so it's very sharp. Okay, so we'll take that off, and that's going to allow us except of course I cut the wrong direction. That was an oversight on my part. Hope I can get this to work properly now. Strangely enough, it looks like it's going to line up just fine. Didn't expect that with that screw up. But it looks okay. Alright, great. So whatever I do to one, I want to do is close to exactly the same on the other. Because if these things don't line up properly, then you're going to yaw the plane with it. Or you can yaw the plane with it, especially if there's an imbalance. Oh, this is not good. That's why you got to be really careful about touching the paint. This paint came off from just being touched on the very tip. Again, probably not the end of the world. because if the paint was going to come off that easy, it probably was going to come off anyway with some other reason. Okay, so now I'm just lining them up. Okay. Alright, very good. So now we got both of them cut up. Okay, so that's going to give us our little wedge cut that we need to make now. And let's see if I can scooch this plane. I wonder if it'll fit if I go the other direction with it. This plane is pretty big. Let's try going this way. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's just kind of hard to get around. I had thought about the possibility of using a couple of toothpicks to insert. These things are so hard to hold on to. They're all staticky because they're made of styrofoam. Okay, so that angle is the angle I'm looking at. But I want to kind of round this front just a little bit. Alright, great. So now the option becomes, do we CA these things on? Do we go ahead and use mucilage? How do we do this? I'm thinking we go for mucilage if we can get it to work. Now remember, we're only going to be gluing the tip right now. And the rationale behind that is that the tip is going to be what allows it to hold while we get our angle shored up. And we're going to shore up the angle with a chunk of foam that's going to go in the middle. And we're going to make that sliver for both sides. We're going to try to make it as close to the exact same size as we can. Okay, so we'll just get a little bit on both. And then we'll just transfer a little bit here. We'll just stick it on there and then pull it. And that'll stick there on its own now. We won't have to babysit it. Now that glue debonded a little bit, so we have to do this side a little bit different than we did the first side. If it debonds like that, it means the mold releases. Probably just got peeled off is what happened. So we'll just go ahead and apply glue to both sides on this one. And this is mucilage, large. Stuff works really good. Okay, so we got glue on both surfaces now, and you'll see it's not delaminating from the wing now. But there's quite a little bit of it, so it's going to be messier. Sometimes I'll twist it like this to get those fibers lined back up. And sometimes there's just too much of it. And then, in which case, you can grab and pull them apart and actually take and remove a little bit of it. That usually works pretty good. And there you have it. Okay, great. So now we've got that on there. And obviously this angle's not quite right yet. we will make it right. But for now, we've got it, in place. Perfect. Okay, so now we just need to cut a wedge out of some foam, preferably something white, and we can go ahead and get it to fit in there. I've been holding back this piece, which is going to be out of like a UMX box from one of those Horizon Hobby UMX planes. So it's not the same exact type of foam. You can tell how sharp this knife is because it's cutting it without it breaking up. But see, this stuff will not collapse super easy. And so that'll be a good wedge material here. And if you don't have it exactly the way you want, you can go ahead and crush it. And if you don't get enough from just crushing it, then you have to cut it some more. Okay, so got it tapering down to almost nothing. You can also sand it down too. It's just harder to get good results when you do that because it likes to rip it out of your hand. You want to have a nice square edge on the leading edge, especially because that's going up into the seam. Okay. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Exactly like that. And then once that's glued in there, this can even be our jig that we can try to duplicate for both sides. Okay, so now that we have our jig or our template, we do need to make it a little bit longer than that. So we're going to cut from here. We'll just cut a block. We'll just cut like this. Now you notice it's really hard to cut that because you can't get deep enough with your cut. Well, that's why a lot of times I'll just use a hot knife, which in my case is a 20,000 shim. I gotta put on my exhaust vent. Excuse me, guys. Make sure you don't catch your planes on from the ceiling. Now this one's kind of dirty, so what I would normally do is I'd clean it by heating it up and then wiping it clean. I suppose if somebody were motivated, you could use a material to actually clean this, like burn off some of the material, let the exhaust go outside in my case, and then you could put some oil or something on there. Okay, then what I do is I take this thing and I just go chop suey, just like that. Okay. Okay. Try not to push them together too much because they will stick back together if you're not careful. Now this is going to make the foam denser than it had been, so be aware of that as you make your cuts, okay? Because it's going to shrink back into that spot. Try not to touch the hot end either. That's usually a bad idea. I've not done it yet with this type of material. See it going out, guys? Periodically I'll just double check and I'm not overheating anything above. See that wanted to stick together, guys. But if they do stick together on you, you can almost always separate them really easy. Okay, so now let's go size this up. Shut our gas off. So we're going to have enough length there. This one's a little bit too thick now. It's always easier to do this than it is to cut it, in my opinion. Now, keeping in mind that as you taper this, you want it to be, the airfoil is thicker at the nose of this, okay? So you want to thin it down at the back, like that. Like that, and you can just kind of rub it on the table or the counter or whatever. Alright, cool. So we can shut this off again. So basically I have two pieces. They're similar. This one needs to come down yet a little bit. Just don't try to dink around. If you don't get them hot enough, it's not going to work well. You end up just ruining your piece. A little bit concerned about the way that collapsed there. I hope it's too long. I can trim it down. Good. So I'll be able to trim it down then, hypothetically. Okay, we need to taper this to almost nothing at the front. So the only way I can really do that at this point would be to try to sand it. Okay. Now we got to check the fit. I'm so close. So very close. Okay, that'll probably do it. Okay, so now that we've got that cut up, our other wedge is already in there loose. So we're going to do kind of the same steps with that. Now this one's got this kind of weird edge on the front, so we'll trim that square because you want to have a flat surface. And then rather than trying to sand this one, we'll take just a little teeny bit off, just like that. Okay? We will sand just to smooth it. Okay. Alright, good. So now we can come back over to this other side and we'll go ahead and get in there and we'll just make our clean cut. Once we have the line, we can pull it out, bring it to our table. Okay, so now what I'll do is, mucilage is not typically great on this type of product for a variety of reasons, just because it's not very strong compared to the EPO. I think this is called EPS. Okay, great. So we got that. Now this is less aerodynamic and more just trying to fill a hole. But there are some strength issues that might come into play. Now the other thing I was thinking is, now that we've got that in, it might not be a horrible idea to go ahead and pin it in somehow, just for a more permanent fit. But then I say that and I think, if I can do without it, it would be better. Be better to not have that pin at all, if we don't need it. Because it's going to possibly show. Well, it's more likely to show, actually. Alright, so now this one, we have to do that last final trimming, but it seems like we still just have too much material at the very end here. So I'm going to actually just take it down a little bit with sanding block. Okay, so it's taken down some material there. I want to see if I can get that to work decent. Yeah, that was a really good fit now. So now we'll just take our knife and go ahead and get our trimming ready to go. It's actually so close now, I'm sort of reluctant to even hardly trim it. Might just try it upside down for fun. Yeah, see, it's already got a good shape to it. So I'll just leave it. I'll leave it untrimmed. Okay, so now this is one of those times where if you have a little bit too much of this stuff, it can actually screw you up. So you want to be careful to remove like crazy excessive amounts and get it to that tacky stage. That other side I didn't have this excessive amount going on, so okay, so it's starting to get really tacky now. I have it in the correct orientation. And I'm pushing hard, so okay, so we're at a little bit of an angle down. We're at a little bit of an angle down. Okay, which is what I want. Okay, great. So I'm satisfied with the angles. So now I just have to make the final decision as to whether or not I'm going to pin it in there. I don't think I'm going to pin it in there. I think we'll be okay with what we got. There's a little bit excess glue here though, which I'm going to try to take out with just a regular Q-tip. Okay, so once you start picking it up, it'll just kind of roll off of there. Okay, great. So we got that taken care of for now. So the next step for us is going to be the rudder. We've got some work to do on that. So I'm going to pause and get cleaned up, and we'll come right back to that. Alright guys, so I touched up where the paint had been missed, and what I'm using is a Model Masters. It's FS1505. It's Blue Angels Blue 1772 611177720. I'm sorry the label got destroyed when I was trying to open it back up, but it matches this blue really nicely. And then over here I just had to touch up the tip where the paint had chipped. But just to give you an idea, this is that touch-up color right there. So it's a very good match for this dark blue. And that dark blue, I'm assuming it would probably be probably the easiest thing to find. But yeah, so I wanted to show you guys that before I got jumped into the rudder assembly. And when I say rudder assembly, I mean there's a couple of different steps we have to do. The first of which, of course, is going to be to really determine what we're going to do on the lettering and numbering. And as you can see, this is at a different angle than the factory or the stock look, which I think looks horrible. It doesn't look horrible so much that it's at the wrong angle. It's lined up contrary to the angle it's supposed to be. Okay, so I'm just going to hang on to those for now. But if you look how hokey this looks, it's like it's going uphill. And if you saw the first video, you would have already seen this a little bit. But the way that A380 is supposed to be level, or just barely past. And you can see on this one it's nice and level, and you can see on that one it's nice and level. And every single example, including the new design, it's always going to be level. So that's what we're working toward right now. And so what I'm thinking about doing is painting this blue, but then we have to actually install the servo in there. And so part of the complication with servo is I don't know which side I need it to be on yet. So what I'm going to have to do is go ahead and run the servo so that we can tell which direction it's going to rotate, because that's going to be wide off of the landing gear. So we'll go ahead and kick everything on, and we'll come right back. Okay, so now I recognize we're not completely done with the landing gear, and it's not even going to be in this position, but for the moment we kind of need to hook this up so that we can at least temporarily test and see exactly where things are going to be located. So the way this works is you put your landing gear in from the bottom, and I'll be moving this whole black thing forward, and then this thing goes over like that, and then your servo will actually spin the landing gear as desired. Okay, but it's important for us to know which direction it goes so that we can mimic that direction, or it's actually the opposite direction on the rudder, because obviously we want the rudder to steer the plane. So I'm going to get this buttoned up, and then we'll come right back. Okay, so I've got those plugged in now. So now I just need to plug in the battery, and things will come to life. You may have noticed I removed the extension cords. Okay. Okay, so now the rudder. So that would be turning the nose this way, turning the nose that way. Okay, so this is going the correct direction. So now we need to make sure that we know which direction the rudder is going. It needs to be opposite. Ouch. Dang it. Okay, so if that needs to be going opposite, so if this were sticking out this side and pointed toward the rudder, okay, that'd be the wrong way. So if the servo were upside down, then it would be going the correct way. So the servo has to be mounted upside down, I believe, is the way that's going to work out. Just stick that on there for now. So if the servo is upside down, okay, so it'll be like this, and I give it rudder input, then that's going to pull the rudder, which is going to hold the control surface and point the plane that way, or it's going to push it that way. So I need it to go up, and I need it to be upside down, and I need the control surface to be, I'll just draw a little arrow on there right now, and this will be the side that's out. Otherwise, we can have the control arm going out the other side of the plane, and it's still wrong. Yep, that's right. So it's regardless of which direction it goes. So the servo is going to have to be upside down, or we have to return, or we have to switch this to the other side, which I don't really think it's going to be that big a deal. I think it might look a little weird having this upside down. I don't think it's going to matter though, because it's going to be hidden. So anyway, this is what we're using for servo, the Emax. Yes, there's actually a protective coating over that right now. Emax ES08MA, which is a Metal Gear servo. It's analog, and it's like a 9-gram size, but it's 12 grams, and they're just really good, and they're just rock solid. So I've got these linked. The 4-pack is the best value. You go to the 10-pack, it's even more expensive per unit. So anyway, alright, cool. So we've got this figured out. It's going to have to be upside down unless I rotate this. I might try that real quick off camera and see how it works. Okay, so one other thing we've got to double check. We know which direction it's going to be going. And now we just need to see if we've got enough relative length, because it's got to be upside down now. I think we'll be okay with this extension cord, as long as this reaches all the way in. Otherwise we'll have to extend it in another way. But I think we'll be alright to reach. So that's the way we're going to do that. Okay, so the next step for us is to start tearing into the rudder. And I've centered the control arm, so we know where the center position is going to be. And we'll just leave all this stuff set up, ready to go for the next step. Alright guys, so we're set up, ready to get this done. We need this to go up. Got a little arrow written on there. Try to keep it somewhat toward the bottom. But we don't want it so far down that it runs into the fuse at all. Now, if you really wanted to, you could also put this into the fuse. But since it's upside down, that's not going to work out very good for us, because it would have to probably be inside the fuse, and then there would be a linkage that goes out. Now, there's nobody saying you couldn't put one into that spot up there and then run a linkage out, but linkages are a pain in the butt. So I'm probably just going to find a spot that's going to be away from our numbers and stuff, but my guess is we're going to have to just stick it right where it fits. So I'm going to put this like that to help me remember. Now, there was an extra one of these control arms, which is kind of cool because we're going to need it. And the other thing is, I want to get this painted right now so I can set up. And we're about out of time for tonight on our little project. So let's get this painting done so it can be set up and dried. Now, this paint, it's the same paint I was talking about on the winglets. And gosh, I don't need that much. And you'll be surprised how good of a match it is if you get it that Model Masters enamel. It's not acrylic, I don't believe. Is this one? I can't remember if this one's acrylic. I ripped up the label, guys. I'm real sorry about that. My Airbus A380 videos would tell you what that is. But there's a lot of those. Okay, so the rationale behind painting over these is to just get rid of the evidence that there was such an ugly, horrific rendition of this lettering scheme. And then when that's dry, then we can go ahead and cut the rudder. So I'm just going to get this ready to rock and roll. Use a Q-tip. Now ideally you would not have to do this, but of all the different things that could be wrong with this plane, this is such an easy thing. The nose is the worst thing. It's going to be hard to fix. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do that. But you guys better believe it, this thing will... It's going to look good. I'm not going to let these ugly non-scale details go. So I'm just going to get a little paint on there first. And then you guys kind of get the idea how this is going to go. I sort of hate to make you watch me do it. There is something strangely satisfying about watching somebody else work. Okay. And if you're noticing a certain chunky consistency to my paint, that's what happens when you have it closed so long that you have to use multiple pliers to open it. It's been closed for a long time. Alright. And you might be thinking to yourself, that looks pretty horrible. Well, yeah, it kind of does right this second, but once it's dry, it'll be okay. It'll blend in a lot better than you probably imagine. And then what'll happen is as soon as you put that, as soon as you put white paint on there, it's going to pop, and it will detract from any sort of visibility here. Now I may have to come in and do a second coat too. That's the other thing too to keep in mind. Okay. So we've got that more or less taken care of. Dang it, got it on myself. I always do, just a little bit at least. So now if I flip this and try to paint it, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get paint everywhere. So let's try it. What the heck was that? That was so weird. It like sprayed paint out of the Q-tip. Must have had an air bubble that popped. I don't know if you guys saw that in the video. I saw it in real life. Now one thing I've learned from painting a lot, and I'm no professional painter by any means, is that you have to put a little something on there or it's not going to cover. So when you think you're low, just dip in there and get some more. Otherwise you're just wasting your time. So if I play my cards right too, this plane will be, once I'm done with this step, then I'll be ready to basically have the assembly all together, and then it's going to turn into landing gear extravaganza, guys. And when I say landing gear, no, I regrettably don't mean retracts. I mean fixed landing gear. We're going to make them look good. We're going to paint those ugly bases. We're going to paint the landing gear silver. Then we're going to touch up the wheels so that they're white as they would be in real life. You can definitely see it right now, but you can see how that's going to blend in nicely too. Okay. Alright, cool. So now the moral of the story is to be patient. Don't rush it. Let the stuff dry. Come back. Refreshed, recharged, ready to rock and roll. And if you really want this stuff to blend in, you'd probably have to paint a whole section. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this do its thing. And it needs a little bit more paint on this side. But I think we'll have to come back to it. There's not really a good option. So for now, guys, I really appreciate you being a part of this. Things are definitely coming together. See how stupid it looks with that landing gear back there? What a joke. It needs to be up front. It will be, by the way. That's just temporary while we're working on it. Come back for more. This rudder should be getting done in the second part of this little sub build video of the rudder. And we appreciate you being there for us. Check the links below. Buy stuff from those links. You can help support our channel. And come back for more, as always. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.